What if I told you that the world Meghan Markle carefully built, the polished facade, the humanitarian branding, the Duchess image, might have a shadowy origin tied to one of the most infamous scandals of our generation? What if I told you that whispers connecting her to a figure like Ghislaine Maxwell, through the very world of yacht culture and high society men, were not just internet gossip, but something so explosive that even seasoned royal watchers avoid touching it? Sounds outrageous, doesn't it? And yet, here we are. The introduction begins with that single, unsettling question. Who exactly was Meghan before the tiaras, before the cameras, before Harry? And more importantly, what doors did she walk through to get where she is today? Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. This isn't just about Meghan Markle. It's about how power circles operate, about how women are drawn into elite networks, about the crossover between Hollywood, royalty, and darker worlds of influence. And right now, today, this matters more than ever because a biographer linked to Ghislaine Maxwell, of all people, has dared to spill tea that could shatter illusions and rewrite the Meghan story we think we know. Imagine the scene: a glossy yacht docked under the Mediterranean sun, laughter, champagne flutes clinking, cameras nowhere in sight, and somewhere in the blur of wealth, secrecy, and indulgence, a young Meghan, not yet Duchess of Sussex, said to be navigating waters she'd never admit to in public, the kind of waters Prince Andrew himself was known to frequent. But let's pause. Let's not give it all away just yet, because the real bombshell isn't in the whispers, it's in what connects them. The timing, the names, the eerie coincidences. Think about this. Meghan's carefully curated story often skips years. Entire gaps in her narrative go unexplored. Why? Why do those missing chapters matter? And why, suddenly, are people in Maxwell's orbit drawing lines between her past and Andrew's? This is where the story takes on its dangerous glow. We're not just talking about rumor. We're talking about how image is weaponized, how alliances are traded, and how the past refuses to stay buried. Now, before you think this is just another tabloid distraction, ask yourself, why now? Why would this biographer speak at this moment, when Meghan and Harry's brand feels shaky, when royal cracks are widening, and when Andrew himself is still lurking in the shadows of disgrace? Coincidence? Or strategy? And here's the uncomfortable truth. Meghan isn't the first woman accused of being connected to yacht culture in these circles. She wouldn't be the first to be positioned, groomed, or used in the chessboard of power. But the difference is, she married into the most famous family on earth. That's why the stakes here are astronomical. Let me ask you directly. If it turned out that Meghan's past wasn't as innocent, wasn't as polished, wasn't as feminist branded as we've been told, would that change how you see her? Would it change how Harry sees her? Would it change how the royals, who already keep her at arm's length, would deal with her? We'll get into those answers. We'll trace the yachts, the names, the whispers, the Maxwell connection, the Andrew overlap, and the shocking implications it could hold for Meghan's carefully guarded reputation. But not yet, because first, we need to zoom out. We need to look at the stage Meghan entered. The yacht world wasn't about vacations. It was about networking, power, and access. And the women caught in its currents weren't always passengers. Sometimes, they were the currency. And that's exactly why this biographer's words land like dynamite. Because when someone that close to Maxwell speaks, people listen. And when Meghan's name comes up in the same breath as Andrew's, well, let's just say the palace may not be sleeping soundly tonight. But here's the kicker. This is only the beginning. We're going to peel this story layer by layer. We're going to connect dots that have been hiding in plain sight. And by the time we're done, you'll be asking the same question I am. Was Meghan's rise into the royal spotlight a love story, or was it something else entirely? Something scripted in darker rooms long before Harry ever laid eyes on her? And what comes next could shake the foundation of her entire narrative. Have you ever noticed how Meghan Markle's biography, so widely told, so often repeated, seems to glide past certain years as though they barely existed? You hear about her Northwestern University education. You hear about her time as a briefcase girl on Deal or No Deal. You hear about her breakout role in Suits. And then, almost overnight, she's suddenly sipping tea with royalty. But what about the years in between? The lost years? The years when Meghan wasn't in the spotlight, but was hungry for it? That's where the trail grows foggy. And that's where the whispers begin. This is where we must start. Because every carefully curated narrative has missing pieces, and Meghan's are more intriguing than most. Why? Because it's precisely in those gaps where powerful people tend to operate. It's in those shadows where deals are made, introductions happen, and reputations are shaped before the public ever gets a whiff of them. Let's paint the scene. Meghan is in her mid-20s, hustling for roles that never quite land. Hollywood is merciless, and every actress knows the odds are stacked against her. She's auditioning, waiting tables, traveling when she can. But there are costs to those travels, financial costs, networking costs, and Meghan wasn't from money. She needed doors to open. So who opened them? That's the question that lingers. And the answer, according to whispers now spilling from unlikely corners, may not be the polished, feminist-approved tale Meghan likes to tell. It might involve yachts. It might involve introductions through the very social circuits tied to men like Prince Andrew. And here's where it gets truly unsettling. You see, Meghan's brand has always been about control. She wants to control the narrative. Every interview, every word, every curated shot of her and Harry in California, it's all a performance. But the biographer connected to Ghislaine Maxwell dropped a grenade into that control, suggesting that the backstory Meghan hides may look eerily similar to the worlds Ghislaine herself once moved in. Now, let me ask you, why do these claims matter? Why does it matter if Meghan once floated in these elite, shadowy circles? The answer is simple. Because the royal family, especially now, cannot afford to be tied, even indirectly, to the scandalous, sordid world that Maxwell and Andrew inhabit. And yet, if Meghan's name is whispered in those same sentences, the stain spreads. It spreads to Harry. It spreads to the monarchy. But before we dive too deep into the Maxwell-Andrew connection, let's step back and examine the pattern. Meghan herself admitted in interviews that she was always networking, always searching for opportunities. She wasn't shy about leveraging relationships to move forward. That's not unusual in Hollywood. But when the relationships drift from Hollywood producers to powerful men with yachts, the tone shifts. The image shifts. And this is where the irony cuts sharp. Meghan has styled herself as a victim of the system. A woman chewed up by the royal machine, spat out by the tabloids, painted as a villain. But what if, just what if, her past reveals that she wasn't only a victim of power, but also a willing participant in playing its game? Let's put it in perspective. Imagine you're watching a play. On stage, you see the heroine. Struggling, misunderstood, fighting for her place. But behind the curtain, there's a second act happening. A quieter act, where deals are whispered, alliances are struck, and reputations are brokered. That's Meghan's hidden act. The one we're not supposed to see. And now, suddenly, it's being exposed. But why now? Why would a Maxwell-linked biographer step into this firestorm at this exact moment? Meghan and Harry's brand is faltering. Their Netflix deals are shaky. Their Spotify partnership imploded. They're scrambling to redefine themselves in the public eye. And just as the cracks show, this story bursts into the open. Almost like someone waited for the right time. Here's where things get darker. The yacht world wasn't just glamorous vacations. It was a system, a network. Women brought into proximity with powerful men. Men who traded influence, favors, sometimes even women themselves. Meghan wouldn't be the first to find herself there, and she wouldn't be the last. But here's the catch. She ended up marrying into the monarchy, which makes this story radioactive. Let me ask you, if Harry knew everything, if he really knew all the whispers about Meghan's past, would he have chosen differently? Or does he know, and simply not care? Does he protect her not just from the tabloids, but from the truth itself? Because one thing's certain, if these connections hold weight, then Meghan's image as a self-made woman, as the plucky actress who won a prince, begins to collapse. And in its place, a much more uncomfortable image appears. A woman who knew exactly how to play the game, long before she walked down the aisle. And that is why this first chapter matters. Because it's not about proving gossip true or false. It's about understanding why the gossip exists in the first place, and why now, in 2025, it's resurfacing with new venom. But here's the real cliffhanger. This is only the surface. Because once you tug on the thread of Meghan's missing years, you quickly find yourself staring at names and places that make your skin crawl. And the next name in that thread? Ghislaine Maxwell herself. What Meghan doesn't want you to know is about to unravel. What if I told you that every glittering party, every luxurious yacht deck, every champagne-soaked soiree in elite circles had a silent architect, someone who orchestrated the guest lists, someone who decided which women would mingle with which men, someone who made introductions that could change lives forever? That woman was Ghislaine Maxwell. Now, pause for a second. We know Ghislaine's name because of the horrifying revelations tied to Jeffrey Epstein. We know her as the socialite who smiled in photographs with presidents, princes, billionaires, and celebrities. But before the handcuffs, before the trial, Ghislaine was the ultimate gatekeeper. She was the key that unlocked entry into the most powerful rooms on Earth. So here's the million-dollar question. If Meghan Markle's name is being whispered in connection with the yacht world, and if a biographer tied to Maxwell herself is suggesting there are overlaps, what does that mean? Did Meghan's rise intersect, even briefly, with Ghislaine's networks? Did she pass through the same corridors of influence that funneled countless young women into proximity with men like Prince Andrew? It's not a comfortable thought, and maybe that's exactly why it matters. Let's peel back the curtain on Maxwell first. She wasn't just a madam for Epstein. That label, while shocking, actually oversimplifies her role. She was a facilitator. She understood that in elite societies, reputations are currency, and reputations can be made or destroyed by who you're seen with. So she cultivated an image of glamour and discretion. She was the woman who could get you into the right party, seated next to the right billionaire, introduced to the right prince. And here's where it gets even more chilling. Maxwell wasn't just introducing men to men. She was introducing men to women. Women who were often young, hungry, eager, and looking for a break. Sound familiar? Now, think about Meghan in her pre-Harry years. An actress on the grind, hustling in Los Angeles, traveling when opportunities arose, always searching for the next step up. We know she was willing to fly to Toronto for suits. We know she leveraged friendships to climb social ladders. Could she have also been drawn into circles where introductions meant more than just career opportunities? Could those missing years align, even faintly, with Maxwell's role as the ultimate connector? This is exactly why the biographer's revelation hits like a thunderbolt, because it suggests not only that Meghan's name was whispered in yacht circles, but that she may have been moving in the same orbits where Maxwell reigned supreme. And this brings us to Prince Andrew. Andrew wasn't just another royal. He was a regular fixture in Epstein and Maxwell's world. He was photographed with them. He traveled with them. He was accused alongside them. And he was known to enjoy the yacht lifestyle, the Mediterranean, Monaco, the endless summer of the super-rich. So if Meghan was present in those same circles, even on the periphery, the optics are disastrous. Because it means that before Meghan ever shook the Queen's hand, before she ever donned a tiara, her name could have been tied, however loosely, to Andrew's. And Andrew, as we know, is a name the royals would love to erase. Here's the twist, though. Meghan has always styled herself as a feminist, as a victim of misogyny, as a woman who broke through the glass ceiling on her own. Imagine the contrast if her past overlaps with a world where women were currency, where introductions weren't about empowerment, but about exploitation. The contradiction is jarring. And let's be clear. I'm not saying Meghan was exploited. What I am saying is that the whispers, the biographer's words, and the timing of these revelations raise uncomfortable questions. Questions about who introduced Meghan to whom. Questions about what role yachts really played in her rise. Questions about whether her curated narrative is missing a darker, hidden subplot. Let's make this personal. Imagine you're Harry. You've left your entire family behind for love. You've defended your wife against tabloids, against courtiers, against your own brother. And suddenly, a story emerges tying your wife, your duchess, to the very man your family has exiled, Prince Andrew. How would you feel? Betrayed? Blindsided? Or would you deny? Because the alternative would be too devastating to face? This is where the stakes explode. Because if Meghan's name lingers even faintly in Maxwell's orbit, it doesn't just tarnish her. It drags Harry into the muck. And through Harry, it drags the monarchy. But here's the real question for you. Do you think this is all coincidence? Do you think it's just bad luck that Meghan's name is being pulled into this right as her brand is wobbling? Right as Andrew remains radioactive? Right as Maxwell's ghost refuses to fade? Or is this part of a bigger chess game? where reputations are weapons, and Meghan is the latest pawn under attack? Because history shows us something chilling. Maxwell knew how to position women. And Meghan, like many women before her, was ambitious, beautiful, and hungry for access. The overlap writes itself. And yet, there's one piece missing. One thread that connects these worlds in ways we can't ignore. Because if Meghan truly brushed against Maxwell's web, there would be evidence. Names, places, stories. And that's exactly what we're about to unravel next. Because the next chapter doesn't just connect Meghan to yachts. It connects her to specific names in Andrew's circle. Names that make this story far more than coincidence. And once you hear them, you'll never see Meghan's past the same way again. Picture this. It's the height of summer on the French Riviera. The yachts are lined up in Monaco, gleaming like floating palaces. Royals, billionaires, and celebrities drift between decks like pieces on a chessboard. And somewhere in this glittering blur, Prince Andrew. The same Andrew whose reputation now lies in ruins. The same Andrew whose name is synonymous with scandal. And the same Andrew whose circles, strangely enough, overlap with whispers about Meghan Markle's missing years. Now let me ask you this. What are the odds? What are the odds that Meghan, a struggling actress on the rise, just happens to be linked to the same elite world where Andrew was a constant figure? Is this mere coincidence? Or is there something much darker threading them together? Let's start with Andrew's pattern. For decades, Andrew was known as the royal playboy. Even before Epstein and Maxwell, Andrew was infamous for his love of parties, glamorous women, and his appetite for excess. He cultivated friendships with oligarchs, tycoons, and shady financiers. And where did many of those friendships unfold? On yachts. Now, consider Meghan. She wasn't a royal yet. She wasn't a global icon yet. But she was ambitious. She was willing to travel. She was looking for introductions. And in the rarefied world of Mediterranean summers, introductions weren't just casual. They were strategic. Someone like Meghan, young and glamorous, could be placed in proximity to someone like Andrew, not for romance necessarily, but for optics, for access, for networking. And this is exactly where the biographer's tea becomes dangerous. Because the suggestion isn't just that Meghan was in the yacht world. It's that she was part of the same circuits where Andrew was already infamous. But let's add some names to this picture. Andrew's crowd wasn't small. He mingled with businessmen like Peter Nygaard, with Epstein's associates, with nightclub owners, with models and socialites whose faces never made the headlines, but whose stories filled tabloids off the record. And those circles weren't sealed off. They overlapped with Hollywood, with fashion, with anyone glamorous enough to catch the eye of men with money. Here's where it gets even messier. Meghan herself has admitted that she was always looking for opportunities. She blogged about parties. She loved being seen in the right places. She carefully curated friendships that could elevate her. One of her known tactics? Positioning herself with powerful women, stylists, PR agents, wives of celebrities. And who was the queen of those networks in the elite yacht scene? Ghislaine Maxwell. So let's imagine the overlap. Meghan is on a yacht, attending an event, mingling with people she hopes will open doors. Prince Andrew is nearby, as he so often was, enjoying the lifestyle. Maxwell hovers, orchestrating introductions. Suddenly, the names converge. Meghan isn't just an actress hustling for a break. She's part of the background in the same story that will one day bring down Andrew. Now, this doesn't mean Meghan and Andrew were close. But proximity matters. Because in power circles, being seen is enough. Being whispered about is enough. Being part of the same room is enough. And once that seed is planted, it grows. This is where irony bites. Meghan built her brand on being an outsider, a commoner who fell in love with a prince. But what if, behind the curtain, she wasn't an outsider at all? What if she'd already brushed against the darker world of royalty through Andrew? That flips the narrative upside down. But here's the twist. Andrew is toxic now. The royal family avoids him like a plague. His reputation is beyond repair. And yet, if Meghan's name is dragged into his orbit, even indirectly, it splashes onto her, onto Harry, onto the monarchy itself. That's the real danger. So let's dig into the contradictions. Meghan has always said she had no idea who Harry was when they met. She claims she never looked up the royal family. She paints herself as naive, surprised by the attention. But if she already moved in the kind of circles where Andrew was a fixture, how believable is that story? Do you believe she didn't know? Do you believe she was oblivious? Or is that part of the carefully curated image she presented to the public, designed to make her rise look accidental instead of calculated? Here's another layer. Andrew wasn't the only royal who drifted in yacht circles. Aristocrats, dukes, minor royals, they all mingled. If Meghan was part of that scene, even briefly, she wasn't just brushing against Andrew. She was brushing against the entire aristocratic pipeline. Which raises another question. Did Meghan set her sights on Harry specifically, or was he simply the royal who stuck? This is the uncomfortable question the palace doesn't want asked. Because if Meghan was already in those orbits, her marriage to Harry looks less like a fairy tale and more like the inevitable outcome of years of networking. But we're still not done. Because Andrew's name brings us to another twist. The scandals he carried weren't isolated. They rippled outward. Everyone connected to him became a liability. Everyone in his circle became tainted. And if Meghan's name can even be whispered in that same breath, her carefully built empire begins to crumble. And here's where the cliffhanger sharpens. Because Andrew wasn't just any prince. He was the Queen's favorite son. He was untouchable until he wasn't. And the fall of Andrew shows us something chilling. Once the truth comes out, no royal connection, no amount of power, no amount of PR can protect you. So if Meghan's story intersects with Andrew's, even in whispers, even in shadows, what happens when her truth comes out? Because the next piece of this puzzle isn't just about yachts or Andrew. It's about evidence. The photographs, the testimonies, the fragments of proof that have yet to surface. And that, dear viewers, is where this story takes its darkest turn yet. What if I told you that every carefully hidden secret eventually leaves a trail? No matter how polished the PR machine, no matter how airtight the denials, no matter how loudly friends of Meghan insist the past doesn't matter, there are always breadcrumbs. Photographs, eyewitness accounts, gossip whispered in the right ear at the right party. That's how scandals survive. They cling to evidence, even fragments of it. So let's talk evidence. The rumors about Meghan's yacht years didn't emerge from thin air. They've been circulating in certain corners for years, resurfacing whenever Meghan's brand comes under pressure. But what makes this moment different is the involvement of a biographer tied to Ghislaine Maxwell, someone who had access to the very people who lived those days firsthand. And when that kind of insider drops Meghan's name, suddenly the whispers gain weight. Suddenly, people start asking, what receipts exist? Let's start with photographs. The yacht world thrives on cameras. On one hand, everyone wants to be seen. On the other, nobody wants to be caught in the wrong moment with the wrong person. Meghan has countless glossy images from her early acting years, cocktail parties, fashion events, trips abroad. But what about the missing photos? The years where she was traveling but mysteriously absent from Instagram, long before she deleted it? The gaps in her social media timeline that just happened to align with peak yacht season? Coincidence or careful curation? Now, there are photos that float around the internet, unverified, grainy, allegedly showing Meghan in glamorous settings long before her fame. The problem is not all of them can be authenticated. And yet, here's the catch. If even one photo placed her in proximity to Andrew's world or Maxwell's circle, the palace would go into panic mode. Because optics matter more than facts. Once an image exists, the damage is irreversible. Then there are the testimonies. People talk. Crew members. Other women who were there. Journalists who heard stories but couldn't publish without proof. The whispers suggest Meghan's name came up more than once in yacht gossip. Young, ambitious, beautiful, moving in circles above her pay grade. Is every word reliable? No. But reputation doesn't need hard evidence to take a hit. It needs whispers loud enough to stick. And that's exactly what we're seeing now. But here's where it gets even more damning. The parallels between Meghan's story and the pattern Maxwell perfected are uncanny. Maxwell would identify ambitious young women, place them in glamorous settings, introduce them to powerful men. Meghan, too, appeared to leapfrog her way into social circles far beyond her acting resume. That doesn't prove anything, of course, but the echoes are unsettling. Now, imagine you're Meghan. You've spent years crafting the image of a feminist, a humanitarian, a victim of ruthless tabloids. And suddenly, evidence, whether photos, testimonies, or tea from Maxwell's biographer threatens to puncture that image. What do? You deny, you deflect, you bury, you sue, if necessary. And yet, every denial fuels curiosity. Every cover-up whispers, "What are you hiding?" Let me ask you directly. If a photograph surfaced tomorrow of Meghan on a yacht tied to Andrew's circle, would you believe her denials? Or would you see it as the smoking gun, the piece of evidence that rewrites her entire backstory? Because history has shown us, once evidence surfaces, the narrative collapses. Andrew himself is the perfect example. For years, he denied connections to Epstein's victims. Then one photograph emerged, his arm around Virginia Giuffre, with Ghislaine smiling in the background. That single image became his downfall. That's the power of evidence. It doesn't need context. It doesn't need explanation. It speaks louder than words. And here's the chilling part. If Meghan's story intersects with Andrew's, even faintly, then it's only a matter of time before a breadcrumb surfaces. It may not be a glossy photograph. It may be a flight record, a yacht guest list, a name in a diary. But the truth has a way of clawing its way out. This is why the palace is nervous. This is why Harry, whether he admits it or not, must be restless. Because Meghan's reputation isn't just hers anymore. It's his. It's the monarchy's. And every scrap of evidence that emerges threatens to drag them all into the same abyss that swallowed Andrew. But here's where the story twists again. The evidence isn't just about Meghan's past. It's about timing. Why now? Why is the biographer speaking at this precise moment? Who benefits from Meghan's reputation being tied to Andrew's disgrace? Because scandals don't resurface by accident. They resurface because someone wants them to. And that question, who benefits, is the one Meghan fears the most. Because the next step isn't just whispers or photos. It's motive. Someone, somewhere, wants this story to explode. And once we uncover who and why, the stakes for Meghan, Harry, and the monarchy will make your jaw drop. Let's step back for a moment. Scandals don't just appear out of nowhere. Stories don't resurface at random. When damaging whispers about Meghan Markle, yachts, Ghislaine Maxwell, Prince Andrew, suddenly start to circulate with fresh force, we have to ask the oldest question in politics, in media, in life itself. Who benefits? This is where the game turns sinister. Because behind every leak, every revelation, every well-timed biographer spill, there's usually someone pulling the strings. Someone with an agenda. Someone who stands to gain while Meghan and Harry lose everything. So who could it be? Let's start with the palace. We know the royal family has always had a fraught relationship with Meghan. From the moment she married Harry, the knives were out. Court insiders whispered that she was too loud, too ambitious, too demanding. The press circled her like vultures. And when Meghan and Harry quit the royal family, Megxit, the bitterness became permanent. The palace saw it as betrayal. Harry and Meghan saw it as survival. But one thing became clear. Meghan's success outside the royal bubble would humiliate the monarchy. So imagine this. Meghan and Harry's Hollywood dream starts to collapse. Spotify cancels them. Netflix grows cold. The media questions their relevance. What better moment for the palace to quietly fuel whispers of her dark past? If Meghan's reputation implodes, Harry is weakened. And a weakened Harry? He's less dangerous to the institution. He's less of a wild card. He becomes easier to ignore. Coincidence? Or calculation? But wait, there's another angle. What about Andrew himself? Think about Andrew's position. He's disgraced, exiled, stripped of duties, a ghost prince lurking in the shadows. His name is toxic. But if Meghan, who is already unpopular in Britain, becomes linked to him, even by rumor, suddenly the spotlight shifts. Suddenly Meghan becomes the new scandal lightning rod, taking heat away from Andrew. Could it be that Andrew's camp benefits from dragging Meghan's name into his cesspool, making her the distraction that buys him breathing room? It's ugly. It's brutal. But it's possible. And then there's the media. Let's not forget their role in this machine. Meghan is a headline goldmine. Duchess on a yacht sells papers. Maxwell biographer spills tea, explodes online. Outrage clicks. Hatred pays. And Meghan's image, already fragile, makes her an easy target. For editors scrambling for revenue, Meghan isn't a person, she's a cash cow. The more salacious the story, the better. But here's where the deeper irony lies. Meghan and Harry thought leaving the monarchy would give them control. They thought they could control their narrative, tell their own truth, brand themselves as victims. But what they didn't realize is that walking away also stripped them of royal protection. Now, when the knives come out, there's no palace PR machine to shield them, no Buckingham firewall to deflect. They're exposed, and their enemies know it. So let me ask you, who do you think benefits most? The palace, eager to bury Meghan's brand before it threatens them again? Andrew's camp, desperate to share the weight of disgrace? Or the media, addicted to the clicks that Meghan's downfall provides? Because here's the real kicker, it could be all three. The palace whispers, Andrew's allies leak, the media amplifies. And together, the cycle spins Meghan's reputation into the ground. And yet, there's one more possibility. One that's darker still. What if Meghan herself benefits? Think about it. Meghan has always thrived in controversy. Every headline, even the negative ones, keeps her relevant. Every whisper, every scandal, ensures she stays in the conversation. Could Meghan secretly welcome the gossip, knowing that in Hollywood, being talked about is better than being forgotten? Could she spin even the ugliest rumors into proof that she's the eternal victim, hounded by powerful forces, persecuted for daring to be different? It sounds twisted, but Meghan's PR playbook has always been about flipping the narrative. If she can turn Yacht Girl whispers into yet another tale of misogyny, of racism, of institutional cruelty, then she wins sympathy, she wins airtime, she wins the spotlight. And that, my friends, is the danger. Because when a scandal benefits everyone, the palace, Andrew, the media, maybe even Meghan herself, it takes on a life of its own. It becomes unstoppable. It becomes the kind of story that no amount of denial can kill. But here's the cliffhanger. If everyone benefits from Meghan's downfall, then who, exactly, is left to defend her? Harry? The man already torn between his wife and his family? The man who's sacrificed everything to protect her? Or has even Harry begun to wonder what else she hasn't told him? Because the next chapter isn't about whispers or motives. It's about loyalty. And the question that could break Harry's heart, does he really know the woman he gave up his kingdom for? Ask yourself this. What happens when the man who gave up his crown for love begins to wonder if that love was built on a lie? That's the haunting question now circling Prince Harry, as the whispers about Meghan's alleged yacht days and Andrew's shadowy circles refuse to fade. Harry has always painted himself as the husband who will stop at nothing to defend his wife. He walked away from his family. He sacrificed military honors. He left his homeland, his titles, his duties, everything, to protect Meghan. He told the world she was the love of his life, his soulmate, the mother of his children, the woman who saved him from the palace prison. But here's the cliff edge. What if she's not the woman he thought she was? Let's rewind to the beginning. Harry has admitted that he was emotionally fragile when he met Meghan. He was desperate for a new chapter, desperate to escape his reputation as the party prince, desperate to find a partner who would ground him. Meghan swept in like a whirlwind, confident, glamorous, American, everything different from the aristocratic women Harry had dated before. She was a breath of fresh air. Or was she the perfect actress for the role he needed her to play? Now, with the Maxwell biographer bombshells and Andrew's name floating in the background, Harry faces a nightmare scenario. That Meghan's backstory isn't as innocent as she painted it. That while he thought she rescued him, she may have been playing a longer game. But let's be fair to Harry for a moment. Loyalty runs in his blood. He is, after all, Diana's son. He saw his mother chewed up by the press, betrayed by the monarchy, left to fend for herself. That trauma shaped him. So when Meghan cried foul, Harry didn't hesitate. He saw his mother in her. He saw history repeating itself. And he swore he'd never let it happen again. The problem? Blind loyalty can become dangerous. Because if Meghan's name is truly tied, even in whispers, to Andrew's sordid yacht world, Harry's defenses begin to sound less like noble love and more like willful ignorance. Imagine the palace's smirks behind closed doors. Harry gave up everything for a woman he doesn't even really know. Imagine William's cold fury, muttering that he tried to warn his brother. Imagine Charles, aging and ailing, despairing that one son brought disgrace through Andrew, and the other may be carrying scandal through Meghan. So here's the gut punch question. Does Harry know? Does he know about the rumors, the yacht whispers, The Maxwell shadows? Has Meghan confessed parts of her past to him in private? Or is Harry standing on quicksand, defending a woman whose secrets could drown them both? We have to remember, Harry isn't just a husband. He's a prince. His entire existence has been defined by image, reputation, and the unforgiving scrutiny of the public. If Meghan's past explodes into undeniable proof, Harry doesn't just look betrayed. He looks foolish. He looks like a man who abandoned his kingdom for a lie. And that humiliation, in royal circles, is worse than scandal. But here's the twist. Harry's loyalty is both his greatest strength and his Achilles heel. He clings to Meghan because letting go would mean admitting the biggest mistake of his life. And Harry, the wounded boy who watched his mother die, cannot face another abandonment. To lose Meghan, or to admit she duped him, would break him. This is why the world is watching so closely. Because cracks are already visible. The awkward body language in interviews. The moments where Meghan dominates the stage and Harry fades into silence. The reports of tension between them in Montecito. All of it suggests a marriage under strain. And now, add this scandal. Add whispers of Andrew. Add Maxwell's name. Add yacht gossip. The cracks widen. Here's a question for you. If the evidence surfaces, if Meghan's name is dragged irreversibly into Andrew's toxic orbit, does Harry double down, defending her to the bitter end? Or does he finally crack, realizing he's been protecting an illusion? And let's not forget the children. Archie, Lilibet. Harry left the palace to protect them. But if Meghan's reputation collapses, what happens to those children's place in history? Are they forever marked as the heirs of scandal, tied not only to Diana's tragedy but to Andrew's disgrace? The irony is brutal. Harry thought he was escaping the palace prison. But in following Meghan, he may have stepped into a deeper trap, one where loyalty and love become chains. And here's the cliffhanger. Loyalty can only stretch so far. And soon, Harry may have to face the unthinkable choice, protect his wife or protect himself. Because in the next chapter, we're going to confront the heart of that choice. We're going to look at how the palace could weaponize these whispers, cornering Harry into silence, isolation, or betrayal. And trust me, the palace never plays fair. Never underestimate the palace. Behind the stiff upper lips, the pearls, the tiaras, and the public smiles lies one of the most ruthless PR machines in the world. For centuries, the royal family has survived not by accident, but by strategy, by controlling narratives, by crushing threats, by sacrificing individuals when necessary to protect the crown. And now, as whispers about Meghan's alleged yacht ties and the shadow of Prince Andrew spread, the palace has the perfect opportunity to do what it does best, weaponize scandal. Think about how the monarchy works. Every time one royal stumbles, another becomes the distraction. Edward VIII abdicated. Cue the rise of Elizabeth II, the dutiful daughter who never faltered. Diana's tragic tell-all. The palace spun Camilla into the woman who stood by Charles. Andrew disgraced by Epstein. Suddenly, William and Kate became the shining future. Scandal isn't just damage, it's currency. It's something the palace uses to shift attention, to reassert control, to remind the world who survives and who doesn't. So imagine the calculation now. Andrew remains radioactive, his disgrace a permanent scar on the monarchy. But what if Meghan's name becomes tied to Andrew's world? What if her reputation collapses in the same breath as his? Then suddenly, Andrew isn't the only stain. Meghan becomes the bigger one. The spotlight shifts. The press, hungry for blood, devours her instead. And in that feeding frenzy, Andrew fades further into the shadows. Convenient, isn't it? But that's not all. By allowing, or even encouraging, these whispers about Meghan to swirl, the palace also accomplishes something else. It isolates Harry. Think about it. Harry has already burned bridges with his father, his brother, and the courtiers. The palace knows his only anchor is Meghan. If her reputation implodes, Harry is left adrift. No family, no wife with a polished image, no safe harbor. And in that desperation, what choice does Harry have? Either crawl back, tail between his legs, or sink into obscurity in California. Either way, the palace wins. Here's where it gets chilling. The palace doesn't need to prove anything. They don't need evidence. They don't need photographs. All they need is to let the whispers breathe, to quietly let journalists run with the Maxwell biographer's words, to stay silent as the rumors grow. Because silence, in royal strategy, is deadly. It suggests there's something worth not denying. Now, let's consider William, Harry's estranged brother, the future king. For William, Meghan has always been the interloper, the disruptor, the woman who stole his brother and pulled him out of the royal fold. Imagine William's calculation. If Meghan falls, Harry falls with her. And if Harry falls, William's position as the unshakable heir is stronger than ever. Meghan's scandal is William's opportunity to cement himself as the steady hand in contrast to Harry's chaos. And then there's Charles. Fragile, aging, beset with his own health rumors. The last thing Charles needs is another scandal. By letting Meghan's name intertwine with Andrew's, Charles can present himself as the monarch who cleaned house. The king who didn't just exile Andrew, but whose reign outlasted the Meghan-Harry circus too. History books love a survivor. But here's the real danger for Meghan. The palace doesn't even need to act directly. They've spent centuries cultivating allies in the press, in the tabloids, in the broadsheets. All it takes is one well-timed, exclusive, one anonymous palace insider quote, one carefully planted seed, and the media does the rest. Meghan becomes the story, Harry becomes the fool, and the palace washes its hands. So let me ask you, do you think the palace is sitting idly by as Meghan's yacht whispers explode? Or do you think they're quietly smirking, letting the wolves do the dirty work while they polish the crown for the cameras? Here's where loyalty turns lethal. Harry's loyalty to Meghan keeps him trapped. The palace knows this. They know he will defend her until the last breath, even if it ruins him. And that's why they let the scandal spin, because Harry's defense will only make him look more desperate, more isolated, more foolish. The palace doesn't need to destroy Harry and Meghan outright. They just need to let them destroy themselves. And this scandal, tied to Andrew, tied to Maxwell, tied to yachts, it's the perfect weapon. But here's the cliffhanger. Every weapon, once drawn, carries risk. What if Meghan fights back? What if she doesn't crumble under palace pressure, but instead goes nuclear, exposing secrets about the monarchy even darker than her own? Because the next chapter isn't about whispers. It's about war. And when Meghan goes to war, she doesn't play fair either. If there's one thing we've learned about Meghan Markle, it's this: she doesn't retreat quietly. Every time the tabloids pounce, every time the palace throws shade, every time she's painted as the villain, she strikes back. She reframes the story. She weaponizes victimhood. She turns scandal into a platform. So what happens when whispers tie her name to the darkest royal scandal of all? Yachts? Andrew? Maxwell? Does she fold under the weight of humiliation? Or does she flip the script, launching her deadliest counterattack yet? Let's be clear. Meghan's entire brand rests on narrative control. When the British press shredded her, she sat down with Oprah. When palace insiders accused her of bullying, she launched her Netflix docuseries. When Spotify cut ties, she leaked stories about being too innovative. Meghan never accepts defeat. She rebrands it. So you can bet, if the Maxwell biographer's words gain traction, if the whispers of yacht life grow louder, Meghan will frame herself as the ultimate victim of misogyny and racism once again. Picture it, an emotional sit-down interview. Meghan in muted tones, Harry by her side. She insists she's being punished for daring to challenge power. She cries about being smeared with lies because she was strong enough to walk away from the palace. She pivots the story from yachts to racism, from Andrew to feminism, from whispers of her past to the oppression of women everywhere. And guess what? Millions will believe her, because Meghan knows the modern game. In the court of public opinion, facts matter less than feelings. If she can make people feel her pain, if she can connect her scandal to universal struggles, suddenly she's not the yacht girl. She's the martyr. But Meghan has another weapon: secrets. Do you really think Meghan walked away from the palace empty-handed? Do you think she spent years inside those gilded walls without keeping receipts? Meghan is smart, calculated. She knows where the skeletons are buried. If the palace dares to amplify the yacht whispers, Meghan could counter with bombs of her own. Whispers about Camilla, whispers about William, whispers about Charles, even whispers about Andrew that the palace would rather keep buried. Meghan may be scandalized, but she's not powerless. She's holding cards the palace fears. And here's the irony. The very scandal meant to destroy Meghan could give her leverage. Imagine her team behind the scenes saying, "If you don't silence these rumors, We'll release X, Y, and Z. The palace, terrified of another Diana-level implosion, might quietly back off. That's Meghan's nuclear option. But let's not forget Meghan's favorite battleground, Hollywood. Meghan has allies in powerful places. Netflix, Oprah, Tyler Perry, liberal media outlets. They've all given her sympathetic platforms. If the British press goes after her, Meghan can turn to the American press for redemption. She can frame the entire ordeal as a cultural war. The stuffy, racist British monarchy trying to destroy the biracial duchess who dared to break tradition. And in America, that narrative plays. Here's a direct question for you. If Meghan dropped a bombshell tomorrow, accusing the palace of planting these yacht rumors to cover for Andrew, who would you believe? The cold, distant monarchy, or the woman crying on camera about her children being targeted? That's Meghan's power. She knows how to make the palace look cruel while she plays the survivor. But here's where things get dangerous. For everyone, a counterattack of this scale would be scorched earth. Meghan wouldn't just burn bridges, she'd torch the monarchy itself. And in doing so, she risks dragging Harry into a war he may not survive emotionally. Because loyalty is one thing, but all-out war against his family? That could break him. So here we are. The palace whispers. Meghan prepares to counterattack. Both sides holding secrets. Both sides ready to leak, spin, and weaponize scandal. This isn't just a PR battle anymore. It's war for survival. But the question remains, who has the deadlier ammunition? The palace, with centuries of power and silence? Or Meghan, with modern media and the courage to say the unspeakable? Because the next chapter doesn't just pit Meghan against the palace. It pits her against history itself. And history, as Diana once learned, always has the sharpest teeth. The parallels are haunting. Diana, the people's princess, and Meghan, the self-styled modern duchess. Two women from outside the inner sanctum, thrust into the gilded cage of the monarchy, adored by the public at first, then devoured by the very institution that welcomed them. And now, as whispers of yachts, Maxwell, and Andrew circle Meghan's name, the shadow of Diana looms larger than ever. But here's the chilling question. Is Meghan truly Diana 2.0? Or is she rewriting the same tragic script in a more dangerous, explosive way? Let's rewind to Diana. She too felt hunted by the palace machine. She too faced a husband whose loyalty wavered. She too weaponized the media, giving her infamous Panorama interview in 1995 where she declared, "There were three of us in this marriage." That moment shattered the monarchy's carefully curated image. But it also sealed Diana's fate. Once she went to war with the palace, there was no going back. Now look at Meghan. She's already had her Oprah moment, her own Panorama. She cried about racism. She accused the royals of cruelty. She painted herself as a victim of a cold institution. Sound familiar? The difference? Meghan isn't just fighting for survival. She's fighting for relevance. Diana didn't need to chase Hollywood deals. Diana's star power was organic. Meghan, on the other hand, must constantly fuel the machine to stay in the headlines. And that's what makes Meghan's war even more dangerous. Because Diana's tragedy ended in Paris, chased by paparazzi, hounded until the very end. Meghan knows this story. She's invoked Diana's ghost repeatedly, with Harry often echoing his mother's pain in his own interviews. But here's the twist. While Diana was genuinely trapped, Meghan is accused of manufacturing her entrapment. And if the yacht whispers gain traction, the narrative flips. Suddenly Meghan doesn't look like Diana, the innocent victim. She looks like someone who played the game, lost control, and now cries foul when it turns against her. Let me ask you, do you see Meghan as Diana's successor? Or as her imitator? Because for many, the line is blurring. And that blurring is dangerous for the monarchy, for Harry, and for Meghan herself. Now let's bring Andrew back into the frame. Diana despised Andrew's behavior. She reportedly clashed with Sarah Ferguson over Andrew's Playboy antics. Diana saw firsthand how toxic that world was. Meghan, decades later, is now being tied, whether fairly or not, to that very same world. The symmetry is chilling. It's as though the ghosts Diana warned about are pulling Meghan into the same doomed orbit. But here's the darkest irony. Diana's war with the palace left the monarchy bruised but not broken. The institution survived. Diana did not. Meghan may believe she can fight harder, spin louder, play the victim longer, But the palace has history on its side. It has the patience to outlast her. And if Meghan isn't careful, she could find herself in the same tragic role, remembered not for her victories, but for how spectacularly her war ended. And what about Harry? That's the cruelest part. Diana's ghost isn't just haunting Meghan, it's haunting him. Harry sees his mother in Meghan. He projects her pain onto his wife. He clings to the idea that by defending Meghan, he's avenging Diana. But what if he's wrong? What if, instead of saving Meghan from Diana's fate, he's pushing her, and himself, into repeating it? Because make no mistake, history is repeating itself. A popular outsider, a fractured marriage, a media circus, a palace that plays the long game, and whispers, always whispers, of scandal that refuse to die. Here's the cliffhanger you need to sit with. Diana's story ended in tragedy. Meghan's story may be heading down the same road, but with an added layer of venom, because unlike Diana, Meghan isn't universally loved. She's divisive. She has enemies on all sides. And when the palace, the press, and public opinion align against her, even Harry's loyalty may not be enough to save her. The question isn't whether Meghan is repeating Diana's path. The question is whether she can survive it. And in the next chapter, we'll confront the ticking clock, the sense that Meghan's time to control her narrative is running out. Because once evidence surfaces, once loyalties snap, once the public decides, it's game over. And the countdown may have already begun. Tick, tock. That's the sound Meghan Markle hears now, whether she admits it or not. A clock winding down. A countdown not toward triumph, but toward implosion. Because scandals, like storms, don't just roll in all at once. They build. They gather energy. They circle silently before striking with devastating force. And Meghan's storm is circling faster than ever. The whispers are already out there. Yacht gossip, Maxwell's biographer, Prince Andrew's name, glued like a stain that won't wash off. At first, whispers are easy to deny, easy to swat away as conspiracy, but the danger is repetition. The more people hear a rumor, the more likely they are to believe it. That's how reputations collapse, not with a bang, but with 1,000 little echoes that drown out the truth. So what happens when those echoes grow into proof? Here's the terrifying part for Meghan. She doesn't control the clock. The palace does. The press does. The insiders who know more than they've said do. At any moment, a photograph could leak. A former yacht staffer could come forward. A diary entry, an old email, a name on a guest list could surface. And if even one of those things connects Meghan to Andrew's circle, the countdown hits zero. And this isn't just about Meghan. The fallout would be nuclear. Harry, tied to her reputation, goes down with her. Their children, Archie and Lilibet, inherit the stain. Hollywood, which once opened its arms, would recoil. Sponsors would flee. Invitations would dry up. Meghan's brand, the carefully built image of empowerment and humanitarian chic, would shatter in an instant. Ask yourself, what happens when a brand built on truth collides with whispers of lies? What happens when the Duchess who claimed she never looked up Harry is accused of having moved in his family's dirtiest shadows long before she met him? That's not just contradiction, that's implosion. Now let's add the palace into this ticking clock. They know how timing works. They've used it for centuries. A distraction needed? Leak a story. A scandal looming? Feed the press something juicier. If Meghan is too loud, too dangerous, too powerful, the palace can time her downfall to perfection. And the cruelest part? They don't even need to strike. They can just wait. Sit back. Let time erode her. And Meghan knows it. That's why the desperation in her moves is showing. The Oprah interview, the Netflix docuseries, the Spotify podcast, the leaks about Hollywood projects. Every one of them is an attempt to control time, to flood the narrative before the countdown hits zero. But each effort has fallen flatter than the last. Oprah was explosive. Netflix was mocked. Spotify ended in embarrassment. And Meghan's brand now feels less like Diana's rebirth and more like a candle burning out. Do you feel it? That sense of urgency? That sense that Meghan is running out of moves? Because that's the countdown. When every attempt to buy time fails, the clock only ticks louder. And here's the twist. Meghan isn't the only one on the clock. Harry is too. How long before his loyalty breaks under pressure? How long before he sees the countdown not as Meghan's war, but as his own doom? Harry has already burned bridges. But a man can only live in exile for so long before regret seeps in. And regret, combined with whispers of betrayal, is a dangerous mix. Let's not forget the press either. They're circling like sharks. The longer the countdown ticks, the hungrier they get. They don't care about Meghan's survival. They care about the kill shot, the headline that ends her credibility for good. And when they sense blood, they never miss. So here's the question for you. Do you think Meghan still has time to rewrite the narrative? Or has the clock already run out, and she just doesn't hear it yet? Because what comes next is the moment no one can avoid. The strike. The explosion. The moment the whispers turn into headlines so damning, no PR spin can save her. That's the endgame of every countdown. And the next chapter isn't about whispers or strategy. It's about the strike itself. The moment the evidence surfaces, the moment the palace, the press, or Meghan's own enemies decide the time is right to drop the bomb. And when that bomb drops, it won't just destroy Meghan's story. It could take Harry, and maybe even the monarchy itself, down with her. Every scandal has a breaking point. A moment when whispers harden into evidence, when rumors morph into headlines, when the thing everyone kind of knew becomes undeniable truth. That moment is the strike. And for Meghan Markle, it isn't a question of if. It's a question of when. Imagine it. A headline splashes across every news site in the world. Exclusive. Meghan Markle linked to yacht party with Prince Andrew's inner circle. Beneath it, a grainy photograph. Maybe Meghan on a yacht, champagne glass in hand. Maybe Andrew blurred in the background. Maybe a familiar Maxwell associate close by. It doesn't have to be explicit. It doesn't even have to prove guilt. All it has to do is exist. And just like that, the bomb drops. The palace goes silent, as it always does. But the silence is damning. The press devours the image, the testimonies, the leaks. Talk shows erupt. Hashtags trend. Meghan's defenders scramble. Her critics crow. And Harry? Harry is trapped in the middle, watching the woman he sacrificed everything for become the epicenter of a storm even Diana never faced. This is the strike. The fallout begins immediately. Hollywood backs away. Brands reconsider their partnerships. Netflix executives suddenly hesitate on renewing deals. The Sussex brand, the carefully constructed empire of authenticity, empowerment, and victimhood, crumbles. Because when the public sees even a shred of evidence that contradicts a carefully polished image, trust is gone. And without trust, Meghan's empire collapses like a house of cards. Let's talk about Harry for a moment. The strike doesn't just destroy Meghan, it destroys him. His memoir, Spare, painted himself as the honest brother, the truth-teller, the loyal husband. If Meghan's past comes out, the world will ask, did Harry know? If he knew, he's complicit. If he didn't, he's a fool. Either way, his credibility evaporates. And without credibility, Harry becomes what the palace always feared he'd become, a liability. The palace, of course, plays it masterfully. They issue a bland statement about private matters, while quietly briefing allies in the press. We tried to warn him. We always knew she wasn't right. William remains silent, but the press does the work for him. The responsible brother. The steady hand. The heir who never faltered. And just like that, the monarchy strengthens while Harry and Meghan weaken. The palace doesn't even need to push. Time and perception do the heavy lifting. And Meghan? She faces the hardest choice of her life. Deny and risk looking desperate. Confess and destroy her brand entirely. Pivot and try to weaponize the scandal as misogyny. But will the public buy it? This isn't about tabloids calling her difficult. This is about being tied, however faintly, to the most toxic scandal the monarchy has ever endured. Andrew and Maxwell. Do you feel the gravity of that? Andrew was exiled. Maxwell was jailed. Epstein died in disgrace. And if Meghan's name is pulled into that orbit, she is no longer the victim of the palace machine. She becomes the woman whose past mirrors its darkest shadows. And here's where the strike hits Harry hardest. His loyalty, once noble, now looks tragic. The boy who lost his mother, the man who abandoned his family, the prince who thought he'd found salvation, reduced to a pawn in a scandal bigger than him, bigger than Meghan, bigger than love. The press won't spare him. Neither will the palace. And Meghan? If she chooses to fight, if she counters with nuclear secrets, she risks dragging them both further into the abyss. Because that's what the strike does. It doesn't just reveal the truth. It forces choices. And choices, in this war, are deadly. But here's the cliffhanger. What if the strike doesn't just destroy Meghan? What if it unleashes something far bigger, secrets so dark, so explosive, that they threaten not just her, not just Harry, but the monarchy itself? Because every bomb has shrapnel, and the next chapter isn't about Meghan falling. It's about who else gets hit when the dust clears.